In the blackened heart of winter, amidst the howling winds that swept across the snow-choked steppes of 16th-century Muscovy, a throne made not of gold, but of shadows. His father had died suddenly, poisoned, some whispered, by the Boyars those fat. He was crowned the first Tsar of all the Russias, not a king, but a Caesar. He believed himself chosen by God, ordained to punish the wicked and elevate the righteous. But to Ivan, wickedness wore many masks. He called it justice. Others called it slaughter. The Tsar, blinded by rage, then a scream so hollow it seemed to echo from hell itself, where madness and remorse melt into a single, horrific expression. He ruled a few more years, sinking deeper into paranoia, speaking to ghosts and dreaming of fire. And then, as suddenly as the frost comes to the Volga, he did alone, hunched over a chessboard, with poison rumored on his lips. Ivan wept over the corpse of the only man he ever loved. But the dead do not forgive. Others say he was just a mirror reflecting the cruelty of an age where power was bought in blood, raised his iron staff and brought it crashing down on his own son's skull. But because they fear that what he became might live again, and righteousness often wore his own, conniving nobles who sipped wine while corpses froze in the gutters. His mother clung to power for 5 bitter years, until she too was found dead, her lips blackened by venom. Alone, orphaned, and watched like a caged beast, Ivan grew up in the corridors of the Kremlin, surrounded not by love, but by silence, betrayal, and dread. A boy was crowned with fire in his blood and iron in his gaze. His name was Ivan, but history would never call him so gently. No history would learn to whisper his name with fear. Ivan the Terrible. He was just 3 when he inherited the crown. They say children become what they see. And Ivan had seen wolves wear the skin of men. When he turned 17, the boy who had once wept in silence roared. Their saddles adorned with dog heads and brooms to sniff out treason and sweep it clean. They rode at night, and when they came, they didn't knock. Towns vanished. Nobles screamed beneath iron claws. Entire families were drowned beneath frozen rivers, their cries silenced by snow. In 1565, he created something that would stain the Russian soul for generations: the Oprinina, a secret army of black-cloaked riders, faces veiled, even watched it all from his gilded chamber. But cruelty, like a serpent, coils even around its master. One bitter day in 1581, in a fit of fury, Ivan struck his pregnant daughter-in-law for dressing immodestly. His son, his heir, rushed to defend her. Silence, blood. The image of Ivan cradling his son's body is immortalized in a painting. Some say he was cursed. But in the frozen corridors of old Russian monasteries, scribes still write his name with shaking hands. Not because they fear his ghost. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, but the world remembers him by a name that sounds almost childlike: Caligula, Little Boots, a nickname he earned as a boy marching with Roman legions, dressed in miniature armor, playing among corpses and the crackling scent of oil and blood. The soldiers adored him. The people cheered him. But beneath those tiny boots, the soil trembled. When Caligula became emperor in 37 AD, Rome exhaled with relief. He dressed as Jupiter, Venus, even Bacchus, and forced senators to worship him. He had golden bridges built across the Bay of Bai, just so he could ride his horse across the sea like a god. But his madness wasn't theatrical. His enemies were mutilated, not just executed. He delighted in seeing pain reflect in the eyes of Rome's elite. Another slit his throat. His name was struck from all public records. But you cannot erase madness. You cannot purge the memory of a god who walked like a man, laughed like a demon, and died like a fallen star. When his body hit the marble floor, silence fell not of mourning, but of long-awaited deliverance. His wife and infant daughter were butchered. Rome didn't just kill him, it erased him. No man, no woman, no child was untouchable. And beneath every decree, every feast, every monstrous performance, lay one truth. Caligula didn't believe he was pretending to be a god. He believed the gods were pretending to be him. It was fatal. Tiberius, the previous ruler, had turned the empire into a machine of silence, paranoia, and invisible death. Caligula, young and charismatic, was hailed as a new dawn. Statues were raised, whispering Roman prayers in a voice that forgot how to be human. Bread was thrown from balconies. He forced noblemen to run beside his chariot until they collapsed from exhaustion, and if they didn't, he had them whipped. He auctioned the wives of senators to the highest bidder for a night of amusement. He would stand atop balconies during public executions and laugh, whispering, "I wish all Rome had but one neck, so I could sever it with a single stroke." The people believed in him until he believed he was a god. At first, it was subtle. He abolished unpopular taxes, released political prisoners, and paraded through Rome like a child playing emperor. But then, the fever came. Perhaps poison that shattered his mind. When Caligula recovered, the man who rose from his bed was no longer the same. He no longer ruled Rome. He consumed it. Historians say it was a terrible illness, perhaps epilepsy. He ordered the bones of Alexander the Great to be stolen, so he could build a temple for them beside his own. He slept with his sisters and displayed them at public banquets, declaring his horse Incitus, a priest and then a consul of Rome. Some say it was madness. Others say it was mockery that in a senate of cowards, even a horse would rule more nobly. His most infamous act: blood ran in fountains. But Rome, like all living things, has a heartbed, and when the empire shivered beneath his touch, it clenched its fist. In 41 AD, in a shadowed corridor of the Palatine Hill, a group of guards surrounded Caligula. One plunged a blade into his side. Statues were shattered. Even now, some say his shadow moves through the ruins of the imperial palace barefoot, crowned in gold. To the world, he was Leopold II, King of the Belgians, a refined monarch, a patron of science, art, and architecture. His palaces glittered with civility. His speeches spoke of progress, and his beard was groomed like that of a philosopher king. There was nothing free about it. 11 million souls, not citizens, but assets. If a village failed to meet them, punishment followed. Not fines, not prison, but mutilation. Soldiers were ordered to present a hand for every bullet fired, proof they had not wasted ammunition. And so, hands, small, calloused, trembling, were severed from the living and the dead alike. Beneath the canopy of the rainforest, rubber trees bled white, and the people bled red. The world saw a map and called it Enterprise. By the time international outrage forced Belgium to absorb the territory from Leopold in 1908, an estimated 10 million people were dead, not from war, but from policy. At his funeral, the Belgian people turned their backs as the cortege passed, but no trial ever came, no sentence. Ghosts with no hands, no names, only memories, of a king they never saw, but whose shadow devoured a continent. No reckoning. The Congolese saw machetes, chains, the statues remained. And history, ever forgetful, polished the memory of a king who had orchestrated one of the bloodiest reigns in modern times, not with fire or madness, but with ledgers and ink, rifles, and the colorless eyes of the force public, Leopold's brutal militia. But far from the salons of Brussels, beyond the reach of scrutiny, he carved out a private kingdom, a realm not of ideas, but of flesh. And he called it the Congo Free State. It was a name born of irony. From 1885 to 1908, Leopold ruled the Congo not as a colony of Belgium, but as his personal property. Men were enslaved to harvest rubber, not for wages, but for survival. Quotas were set by the ton. Mothers wept over baskets of their children's hands. Entire villages were burned as warnings. Women were taken hostage to ensure the compliance of their husbands. Resistance was met not with war, but with annihilation. And still Leopold smiled from his portraits, surrounded by busts of Roman emperors and maps shaded in imperial white. He claimed he was bringing civilization, roads, schools, hospitals, but the truth lay in the ledgers. Rubber exports soared. Ivory glistened in the halls of Europe. And beneath it all, silence. The silence of the mutilated, the buried, the unrecorded. Mark Twain would later write of the Congo, calling it a crime against humanity. Others called it genocide. And what of the king? Leopold died in his bed, shunned by many, praised by some. The Congo Free State was renamed. In Kinshasa, stories still linger of spirits in the jungle, whispering in broken French. He was born Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, but the world would forever remember him by the name Nero, a name that echoes like a curse in the ruins of Rome. His early reign was marked by reforms, by art, by mercy. He banned capital punishment, reduced taxes, and gave concerts to the people. But like the slow cracking of a statue, sanity began to fracture. Power whispered too sweetly. The artist within him grew louder than the emperor, and the shadows began to dance. He was not born to be emperor, but the throne came to him like a prophecy stitched in blood. First, he tried a collapsing boat. They were rounded up, imprisoned, and slaughtered in grotesque displays. Some were torn apart by dogs in the circus. Others were dipped in pitch and set ablaze to light Nero's gardens at night. He called them criminals. He called it justice. History called it the first persecution. Alone, frantic, he fled to a villa, trembling, whispering, "What an artist the world loses in me." Whispers told of his survival, of his return from the East, of his coming vengeance. Perhaps it was guilt. Or perhaps some fires never truly die. Before the soldiers could reach him, he drove a dagger into his own throat, aided by a slave. His mistress, Papa Ya, pregnant with his child, died after he kicked her in a fit of fury. He forced nobles to applaud his poems, his songs, his plays. Rome became his audience, and he, its tyrant troubadour. Rome began to see their emperor not as Caesar, but as an actor wearing a mask, one that could not be removed, even in madness. She swam ashore. Then he ordered assassins. A palace not of marble alone, but of decadence. It had rotating banquet halls, artificial lakes, ceilings that rained perfume. The empire bled while he hosted operas in golden robes. For 6 days, the city burned, and as flames devoured temples, markets, and homes, a rumor rose from the ashes that Nero had ordered it. Some said they saw imperial servants spreading oil. Others claimed Nero watched from his private theater, singing of the fall of Troy as Rome collapsed. They broke into her villa, and as she bared her belly to their blades, she screamed, "Strike the womb that bore him." Her blood was the price for his freedom, and he paid it again and again. His mother, Agrippina the Younger, a woman of ambition more than love, poisoned, seduced, and schemed her way through palaces to place her son upon the throne. When Claudius, her husband, Nero's stepfather, mysteriously died from mushrooms, the boy became emperor at just 16. At first, he was golden. He killed his own mother, not with rage, but with design. His wife, Octavia, was exiled and executed. Then came the fire. In 64 AD, the heart of Rome ignited. The fire gave him something he always craved, a blank canvas. He seized the burnt land and built his domus aurea, the golden house, but guilt, like fire, spreads. To silence suspicion, Nero found a scapegoat: the Christians. As the years passed, Nero descended further, into paranoia, delusion, megalomania. He no longer wanted to rule. He wanted to perform. But every show ends. In 68 AD, the Senate declared him a public enemy. His guards abandoned him. Nero died, not with the fury of a conqueror, but with the silence of a child who mistook applause for love. And yet, the myth did not end. For centuries, imposters claimed to be Nero returned.